What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 322 of AskGSM here today for Wednesday, January 29, 2020. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well, coming off that extremely exciting and super newsworthy Royal Rumble weekend. I'm still recovering, and it's been a couple days now. We had Edge come back, Drew McIntyre win the Royal Rumble, Charlotte Flair winning the Royal Rumble, some not-so-great moments as well. I was at the Northeast Wrestling Show on Saturday, got to meet Bob Backlund, who I've met before, but never had a chance to meet prior to Saturday. Darby Allin, Gorillas of Destiny, they were both really cool. Animal of Legion of Doom. Really fun time there. The NWA Hard Times pay-per-view from Friday, a very good Raw on Monday, and a ton more happening in the last week since I spoke to you guys last right here on AskGSM. I obviously cannot get into everything right here on the show. I have a ton more to say, a ton more to talk about, a ton more to discuss on Wrestle Rant Radio tomorrow. So cheap plug for that. Be sure to check out tomorrow's loaded episode of Wrestle Rant Radio. No reviews of NXT or Dynamite this week. I'll probably be recording Wrestle Rant Radio right after I'm done with #AskGSM. So I will be discussing probably some quick thoughts on the NWA Hard Times pay-per-view from Friday, the Worlds Collide show from Saturday. How could I forget about that? I feel like that was lost in all the noise by the time the Royal Rumble was over. But that was an amazing show. I thought that was a fantastic show on Saturday. I'll give quick thoughts on the Northeast Wrestling Show I was at on Saturday as well, the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, a full review of Raw from Monday, the announcer changes, the Andrade suspension, WrestleMania plans, and so much more. So, again, we'll discuss some things here and there on today's show in regards to your questions, which you can send in, by the way, through Twitter at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Wednesday nights, Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So let's get started here. Again, a ton to get into, and I'm so excited to answer all your questions for this week, as I am every single week. Emmanuel A., and I will say this before we get started real quick. For some reason, YouTube was being a fucking bitch last week, and the week before too, when it came to uploading my videos. Like, I recorded the video last week super early on Wednesday morning. I'm recording this relatively early on Wednesday too, compared to when I usually record around like 10 or 11 or 12. But for whatever reason, YouTube was just being a fucking bitch, and the episode never ended up going up until like 8 o'clock. Not until after I left my house and I went to Alexis's house to watch NXT and Dynamite did the show get uploaded. So, anyway, yeah, hopefully that's not an issue going forward. I think I figured out how to fix it if it is, but hopefully it doesn't take fucking 6 hours to upload the episodes anymore, even though they're only an hour long. But nonetheless, first question from Emmanuel A. from YouTube. His question was, did you know MVP had a New Japan Pro Wrestling run in 2011 through 2013 and was originally the face of their U.S. expansion? He was even the first IWGP Intercontinental Champion. He beat Okada, Tetsuya Naito, Toru Yano in a tournament, with the IC title intended to be the quote-unquote foreigner's title. Apparently, the initial expansion ended up being a bust and MVP's run underwhelmed, but MVP might have been the one responsible for New Japan Pro Wrestling World. There's an interview where he talks about encouraging people on Twitter to tweet at the president, and then had a meeting with the New Japan office, advising them to put up a YouTube channel and a website in English and to hire English commentators who could present the talent to English-speaking audiences. So I knew about the Intercontinental title run. I remember when he won it. I wasn't watching New Japan at the time. I don't even watch it now. But I remember hearing about it back in 2011 that he was their inaugural Intercontinental Champion. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I don't really remember much about, the run itself, the matches he had, the tournament, whatever. I just remember that he was champion. I didn't know that the championship run that he had underwhelmed and that it was kind of a bust for MVP to be the face of their U.S. expansion. And even by that point, I think the guy's 46 now, so at the time he would have been 37 maybe, 38 probably, because this is only going back, not even 10 years, this is going back 9 years, 8 or 9 years to 2011, 2012. So he's kind of old now. He was kind of older when he got into wrestling to begin with. I think he joined WWE probably when he was 30, I want to say. 29, 30, which is a little later than for most people to be coming into WWE, unless you're already established elsewhere. And then he was gone within a couple of years. So he joined New Japan by the time he was 35, 36, already up there. MVP, he's one of those guys where I feel like, unlike John Morrison, MVP had a lot of different runs in different places. but he never really took off the way that people thought he would. He was a good talent in WWE, but he was one of those guys, in my opinion, where he may have been able to go further than he did as like maybe a world champion, possibly. But I feel like MVP's in-ring ability, I know this isn't really your question, but I wanted to mention it. I feel like, first of all, it was great to see him back on Sunday, but I feel like, not that he's overrated, but I don't think he was ever going to be a world champion. He was one of those solid upper mid-card guys, people like him, Mr. Kennedy, who they absolutely had plans for to push as a main event talent, but it didn't work out for a variety of reasons. But they had MVP, Mr. Kennedy, Carlito, John Morrison, all these guys that were like upper echelon heels, babyface, so Shelton Benjamin being another one, throughout the 2000s that I remember very fondly. A lot of those guys now find themselves back in WWE. MVP just returned. Benjamin's been back for a couple of years now. Morrison just came back a couple weeks ago. Kennedy's like the last holdout from that era that has yet to come back. Even Carlito, who has yet to have a real like return. But he came back for a very, quick second of the 2014 Hall of Fame. He kind of got his reaction there for coming back. Kennedy, after he was released, never made another appearance from WWE for WWE in the last 10 years. I know he's making appearances now in the NWA, and he was in Impact for a while, but I think it'd be cool to see him back in, WWE, if only for a one-off return in the Rumble or something. But anyway, MVP, I feel like, was one of those guys that just worked better in WWE because he was more of a character than he was. Like, I don't really remember many great MVP matches. He had a great feud with Matt Hardy, and they had a few good matches, but beyond that, MVP never really had any standout matches in his 4 or 5 years with the company. Yeah, he had that Inferno match with Kane that was more of a spectacle than anything, and he had like a very brief feud. I don't even remember. What else did he do in WWE? He was U.S. champion for a while. He had a couple matches with Ric Flair and a few other people that were, again, decent matches, nothing great. But that was really about it. I know he was face for a while. But anyway, with MVP, I mean, they probably had higher hopes for the guy when they brought him in New Japan, and he just didn't exactly work out. He didn't exactly work out the way that they wanted to. Because it was kind of the same thing in TNA. I feel like when TNA brought him in 5-6 years ago, they had higher hopes for him to be like one of their top stars, and he was treated like a top star right from the get-go, but he never won the World Championship. I think he was supposed to, but he got hurt, so they gave it to Bobby Lashley instead, and MVP never actually ended up winning the championship. Instead, he was more of a mouthpiece for Lashley, which honestly is probably the better role for him at this point in his career. He's a great character. Like, it was cool seeing him back on Raw, but in all honesty, if they really want to utilize MVP in 2020, which I'm sure he's not really looking to do to get a full-time run with WWE anymore, using him as a mouthpiece I think would be sick for a guy like Bobby Lashley, who he has history with from TNA from years ago. But I know that's not part of your question, but I just wanted to discuss that because he almost went to Lucha, and I think that fell through because it was a contract thing or something. He never ended up actually appearing for the promotion. His Impact run was nothing special at all. He was a part of that Beatdown Clan thing, I think, was it the Beatdown Clan? I don't remember, but he was a part of that mini faction with Lashley and Kenny King, and then they formed the Beatdown Clan, which I don't know if he was a part of. I don't remember. But he was gone from TNA by the summer of 2015, so he wasn't there for very long at all. And then I think he may have done some Ring of Honor dates. I don't really remember. So he's done a lot of different stuff in the last 10 years. None of it was all that successful. Not as much so as like John Morrison, who was an Impact World Champion, Lucha Underground Champion, AAA Champion. MVP never really had that same success, but it is cool to see him back. I didn't know about the expansion stuff being a bust with MVP being the face of their U.S. expansion years ago, but it is cool to hear that he was definitely a part of the process of getting New Japan over here in the States. With the, by way of New Japan World and getting the English-speaking commentators to do the commentary for the matches, putting stuff on a YouTube channel. Because honestly, if it wasn't, I don't even really watch New Japan anyway. But I'm one of those people, and maybe I'm an asshole for this, I don't know. If it's in, like, if the commentary's in Japanese, I mean, I'll probably still watch the match anyway, because it's more about the match and not the commentary. But it's hard to, like, for a guy like me who doesn't watch New Japan, I don't know the stories, the commentators kind of help fill in the blanks. Kevin Kelly's tremendous. Don Callis, when he was there, was really good too. I'm not sure who else is doing the commentary now. But I think those guys do a great job of really filling in the blanks for people like me who don't watch the product. If I can't understand the commentary, and it's all in Japanese, I'm sure they sound excited and everything, that's great, and I can sense their enthusiasm. But if I can't understand a word they're saying, I probably won't watch. So they are very smart to do that, put stuff up on their YouTube channel. Their U.S. expansion still isn't exactly off to a stellar start so far, but it's definitely far beyond what it was back in 2011 when I had zero exposure to New Japan because they were never really putting stuff out on YouTube and, having English commentators do commentary for the matches, stuff like that. They're doing way more of that now, which is great. Elena the Y from YouTube's got a couple questions here. First one being, Brock Lesnar is problematic on a number of levels, but when he's in the ring, nobody is more believable to me. The stuff he does feels about as tense and as real as WWE is going to get. The thing about Brock is that for better or for worse, good or bad, Brock Lesnar is by far the most important performer in the biggest wrestling promotion in the world. People like Sheamus and Baron Corbin can talk about how getting reactions means they're doing their job well, all they want. But I dare you to name one person who causes reactions and emotions of meaning more than Brock Lesnar. It's not really a question, but I absolutely agree. I honestly don't think there is anyone more important to the WWE storylines right now than Brock Lesnar. For better or for worse. I mean, that part of that is WWE's fault because they've centered the entire product around this guy for the last number of years with him as world champion. But still, like the way they've presented him, and you're absolutely right, there is zero arguing that Brock Lesnar is the most legit guy in that entire company. Male, female, doesn't matter. Brock, it doesn't get more legit than him. When you know he's going out there for a match, you know it's going to have a big fight feel. It doesn't matter whether you're looking forward to it or not. It could be Lesnar and Reigns. It can be Lesnar and Rollins. It could be Lesnar and fucking Keith Lee on Sunday in the Rumble. You know it's going to have a big fight feel. And even to this day, 8 years removed from his exit from WWE in 2004, he's still having fresh matches. He's still interacting with people we have not seen him interact with yet in WWE. Him and Nakamura had a match, I believe, for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship like a fucking dozen and a half years ago, maybe back in 2006 or so. And about like a decade and a half ago. And they finally got to interact in WWE for the first time on Sunday. Him and Cesaro, a dream match of mine from many years ago. Obviously, it's never happening. Cesaro will never, ever be presented as a threat to Brock Lesnar. But it was still cool to see him cross paths in that Rumble match. So anyway, I thought that was really, really cool. But yeah, Brock, that match would not have been what it was without Brock Lesnar. People can say all they want, his shtick is getting tired, it's boring, and he has the same matches, which is absolutely accurate to an extent. But he's still the most important guy in the entire company. No one brings a sense of realism to any match, feud, program, promo, segment, whatever, than Brock Lesnar. And that's just a fucking proven fact. No one else can compare to the Beast. And I'm not his biggest fan. I love Brock Lesnar. I'm a big Brock Lesnar fan. I'm not always a fan of his booking and how they handle him and how they always have to have the fucking top title on the guy, which I don't think is necessary. But he's their guy. He's their guy right now. If you want to look for any one face of WWE, it's probably Brock Lesnar because he's consistently booked better, again, for better or for worse, than anyone else on the WWE roster. He's only suffered a handful of losses in the time he's been back in the company at the hands of Roman Reigns at SummerSlam 2 years ago, Rollins a few times last year, Goldberg once at Survivor Series 4 years ago, and then Triple H and John Cena. That's 5 matches that he's lost, that he's been pinned clean in. I don't think there's any more. In the span of 8 years, that's a pretty good track record. And the Cena and Triple H ones happened within the first year. Beyond that, only 3 people can say I think they've pinned Brock Lesnar in the last, since he broke the streak 6 years ago at this point, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Brock Lesnar's value to WWE and his importance cannot be understated enough. It cannot be understated. It should not be, underestimated, whatever. Brock is a very important part of the WWE circle, again, for better or for worse. Elena's second question here. Every time I rewatch clips of Edge's return, I can't stop looking at expressions. Honestly, go back and watch Edge's face when he steps through the steam. That's the face of a man who got to live the dream of doing what he loved since he was little and thought he was never going to get to do again. It's the face of 9 years of pain and worry and wondering and hoping. It's the face of a man who just realized an entire baseball stadium full of fans know who he is and missed him and still love him. Is there any return that will ever be more surreal? It's hard to think of any other return that comes close to that one. Like, I was there for the Hardy Boys one in 2017, which is still my number one because I was there for it. Maybe if I was there for this one, it would either come close or top it. I was always just a bigger Hardy Boys fan. So it's always going to be it's always going to hold a very special place in my heart. And they were a super hot act at the time at TNA. To see them back in WWE after so long would have been like, holy shit. Like, it was a legit holy shit moment. And that reaction still gives me goosebumps 3 years later. The Edge one is similar in that we kind of knew it was coming, because we've been hearing about these Edge rumors for months. But it's one of those things where, unlike the Hardy Boys one, where I figured they would be in WWE eventually, they kind of had to be. It was really only inevitable. The Edge one, I honestly never believed. I figured there were more signs of it. I've told the story before. I'm going to write a story about it on my Facebook page, the Graham GSM Matthews page, later today if you want to check it out, about my experience with Edge, how I almost got to I already interviewed him about a year and a half ago in November of 2018. I had the chance to interview him again a couple months ago, and the interview fell through. Not because of anything I did. It wasn't just me. It was all media outlets, and they were told that, hey, Edge isn't doing interviews at this time. To me, that told me there's some smoke to the fire here about him going back into wrestling, because he had just left his podcast. There was a whole weird thing. There were rumors about him re-signing with WWE. All this crazy shit. And I'm like, maybe there's smoke to the fire here. And that return, man, again, I cannot stress this enough. It was one of the coolest fucking moments I've ever experienced as a fan, and I wasn't even there. Like, I wasn't expecting him to be in the match. I wasn't getting my hopes up for him to be in the match. And this isn't one of those things where, like, oh, so-and-so comes back. Like, CM Punk coming back would be amazing, too. Don't get me wrong, because I'm a big Punk guy. But, like, he's always had the opportunity to come back. I know WWE isn't exactly on the greatest terms with him, but that's a more matter of his choice. Like, I don't want to come back. He can change his mind at any time. You can't change someone's health status. You can't change the status or the health of someone's neck. You can't just say, oh, my neck's all better, I'm ready to come back. Edge never even had a choice. He had to hang it up because of a serious neck issue from years earlier that finally caught up to him. He was going to retire anyway, he said, in 2012. He just ended up speeding up the process and retiring in 2011 instead. But it still sucked. Like, it's one of those things where you want to be able to get to say goodbye and appreciate the last match while you can, as opposed to, some people ride off into the sunset and they don't know these people have their final matches, which is fine too. But like with Edge, he never even had a fucking choice, So with Edge, it's cool. It's amazing to see him back. And I never honestly thought it was possible. It's been 9 years. I know after Daniel Bryan got cleared, people were thinking, oh, maybe Edge, maybe this person, maybe that person, maybe Paige retired around that point. But with Daniel Bryan, it was different because it was a concussion thing. You can improve the brain. I'm not sure you can improve the neck. I don't know if it's one of those things that even Stone Cold Steve Austin has said, where he feels that he can come back for one more match if he wanted to, which he doesn't, and it's not going to happen at this point. It's been so long. He's up there in age anyway, so it's not like it even really matters. I mean, not to say that Edge is super young, in comparison to Stone Cold. I'm sure the age difference is no more than like 10 years. I think Stone Cold's in his 50s, and Edge is up. He's close. I mean, like, Jericho's 49 now. Edge is probably 46, 47. But to see him get a couple more, I mean, he actually might be early 40s. No, is he? Let's see. I feel like he's 47, Edge is. You would never know. I mean, he's the coolest fucking wrestler in the world, so he looks like 10 years younger than he actually is. Yeah, so he's 46 years old. If this contract talk is to be believed, and that it's a 3-year deal with WWE, that makes sense. I mean, Jericho's 49, and he's the current AEW World Champion. So age is merely but a number. With Stone Cold, though, he hasn't been in the ring for over a decade and a half. He doesn't want to get back in the ring, so that's a totally different story. But who would have known that Edge would have ever even had a choice to get back in the ring, and that his neck would have healed the way that it did? And honestly, I'm going to say this right now. I know this is all about Edge and whatnot, but I absolutely think the competition now that WWE has in AEW played a factor in this 120%. Not to say, oh, you should be thanking AEW for Edge coming back. Not to say that at all. This was all Edge. This was all his determination. He's in amazing shape. If it wasn't for him, he wouldn't be back in the ring to begin with, obviously. But would they have cleared Edge if AEW wasn't an option? Because it's been reported several times in the last couple days by various credible sources, PW Insider, Fightful, Pro Wrestling Sheet, that Edge had serious talks with AEW before coming to terms on a deal with WWE. AEW probably said, hey, if you can get cleared by doctors, then we will let you wrestle, and you can also be a backstage agent and whatever. Which, it just wouldn't have been the same. To see Edge come back to a ring in a different company that wasn't WWE, you could poop on WWE all you want, but it would not have had the same type of impact in anything else as it would have in WWE. That's just, again, I would think that's a fact. But anyway, with Edge, AEW, I mean, again, they offered him a very serious deal before WWE came knocking saying, hey, we'll clear you. Like, just come on over here. We want you way more than they want you. Like, we just don't want you to go there. Edge played the field. I mean, maybe he had no desire of going to AEW. Who knows? We will never really know. Maybe he just played the field, and that's why he got a better deal, a sweeter deal from WWE, which is very smart if true, if so. But either way, would he have had that same leverage 5 years ago? I mean, he wasn't going to TNA or another promotion like that. So would it have been the same situation 5 years ago? I don't think so. I really don't. I don't know if the neck healed over the course of 10 years. I'm not really sure, because we were told 10 years ago when Edge initially retired that if he took another bump, he could be dead. He could die. So I'm not really sure what changed in that time. Edge didn't really elaborate in his promo on Monday's Raw. But even still, it's an amazing return, an amazing moment. I don't know if we will ever quite see another return like that again. We might see people choose to come back, people like CM Punk, people like that. Edge never had a choice. So Edge coming back is not just awesome as a fan, but it's so important to people like Paige, people like Jason Jordan, people like Tyson Kidd, who have all had neck issues and have all been told you can never wrestle again. Paige has only been retired for 2 years now, but after seeing the returns of Daniel Bryan and Edge, you can only imagine. What's going through Paige's head, thinking that right now, like, holy shit, I have a chance. And she's still very, very young. So with Paige, there is a major chance that she could be back. And honestly, I think at one point down the road, we will see her in a Women's Royal Rumble match, the same way we saw Edge on Sunday. Maybe in a couple years from now, maybe 10 years from now. But either way, I feel like they will absolutely clear Paige eventually. I know she just re-signed with WWE, so maybe she's not even thinking about coming back in the ring. Who knows? I feel like deep down she does, and at some point they will clear her, even if it's not anytime soon. Tyson Kidd and Jason Jordan, it's a little different. With Bryan and Edge, they had the option of leaving WWE, going on the Indies, or going to AEW, whatever, getting big money there. WWE just didn't want to lose them. Tyson Kidd and Jason Jordan, will they really break the bank for other companies? Probably not. I mean, they're not exactly big stars. It would be great to see them back in the ring, but hey, they don't really have that same leverage, and maybe WWE just wants to play it safe and not clear them. Jason Jordan, maybe. Tyson Kidd, his injury was a super freak accident. He had like a 5% chance of surviving the neck injury that he suffered that night. There's a very good chance we could have had a very similar situation to Owen Hart, where Tyson Kidd almost died in the fucking ring. That would have been absolutely tragic. We're very lucky that didn't happen. So I almost wish that he wouldn't come back to the ring, just to prevent anything from happening to him again. But you never know. Maybe these things heal. Maybe he's working on getting cleared. Who the hell knows? He retired years ago. He's been working as a backstage agent for the last couple of years. But hey, I thought Edge was the most content person in the world when it came to just accepting retirement and moving on. But clearly not, because he's back now. So that was an amazing moment. And those emotions, those facial expressions on Edge's face were priceless. They were priceless. You could see that he wanted to cry coming out, and the sense of relief being back in the ring and hitting those spears, and that excitement that you could see in his mannerisms and his face, and in his the way that he moved around on Raw when he came out on Monday night. It was something you can't really even put into words. So I cannot stress enough how cool it was to see him back, and how important this is to the wrestling industry, meaning that if Edge can come back, almost anything is possible. Someone tweeted me real quick about the Edge thing, saying that maybe this means that Shibata could be cleared from New Japan, who suffered a very not similar neck injury. He had, Edge and Stone Cold have had spinal stenosis, which I believe is what Sheamus is suffering from, or at least did at one point. That's why he was gone for so long last year. Shibata had a very serious neck injury, and it's a different story. WWE, we now know, will probably clear just about anyone. Sting is not off the table either. Sting, there's a very good chance we could see him come back for one more match to close out his career on his terms. Very good chance of that happening. Someone like a Shibata, I just honestly see no chance of that happening in New Japan. I've heard that they've told Shibata, the officials, have told Shibata that he has a 0% chance of ever getting cleared, so don't even bother trying to get cleared by other doctors, because it's not going to happen. They will never let him wrestle. It's just a different culture over there. Now, would he leave New Japan to come to WWE and try wrestling? Probably not. But in WWE anyway, we know there's now there's a chance that almost anyone can come back. As long as you're still alive and you can still go, WWE, I mean, with Edge's case, it was a little different, and Daniel Bryan too. But we now know that Paige, Sting, Jason Jordan, even maybe Tyson Kidd, even though I probably would keep him on the sidelines due to the severity of his neck injury, we now know that anyone can make a comeback, which is super fucking cool. Their third question here. A lot of people give Randy Orton shit, and yes, I do too, but he's the best in WWE doing the little things to tell stories in the ring. The slow, methodical, psychotic way he kind of wandered around the ring trying to decide what to do against Edge on Raw and seemingly trying to talk himself into and out of doing it was great. And I'm actually mad at WWE's YouTube channel for cutting out all the pathos in their clip because Orton was killing it. I'm really pulling for the Edge Orton WrestleMania match to be a classic because Orton doesn't have enough standout WrestleMania matches. Basically, I need something that makes up for that Triple H match at WrestleMania 25 or at least a Wyatt match at 33. Is that possible? Yeah, you're right. Orton, I feel like, has not had enough classic matches at WrestleMania for a guy that is as good as he is. He hasn't had many amazing WrestleMania matches. The Triple H match was a dud. The Wyatt match was probably the worst WrestleMania match he's ever had. That match sucked. The three-way with Triple H and Cena from 24 was pretty good. The WrestleMania 30 triple threat with Bryan and Batista was great, but it wasn't really his match. It wasn't really a singles match. It wasn't, it was a great match that he that he partook in, and it was absolutely a match that he could say was one of his best WrestleMania matches. But I don't really think of the match as being a Randy Orton instant classic, I don't really think of that match and say to myself, wow, what a great Randy Orton match. Like, he was a part of the great match, but it wasn't his match. If anything, I think more of that match as being Bryan's moment than Randy Orton's or Batista's. The Rollins match is a different story. I thought the Rollins match from the following year, WrestleMania 31, was terrific. Quite honestly, and this might sound crazy, it's one of my favorite WrestleMania matches. Maybe not like top 3, but it's up there in the top 10. I really enjoyed the feud, the match, the finish specifically. Just an absolute blast of a match. And then he really hasn't had a great match at WrestleMania since. The AJ match was pretty good, was probably the best one since then. But even that was kind of underwhelming. It was, not that it was short, but it didn't really reach that next level that we know that it could have. The Wyatt match, less said about that, the better. The 4-way from WrestleMania 34 was incredibly forgettable for the United States Championship, I think involving Mahal, Rusev, and Rude. I remember nothing about that match. That's how forgettable it was. And I remember the dumbest stuff, But anyway, I think this Edge match at WrestleMania 36 could be a classic if they take the route of storytelling as opposed to exciting in-ring action. Like, I think they could have had a great in-ring match 10 years ago. And they did have some pretty good matches back in 2007 and 2010 and stuff when they had their first few feuds. But I think now in 2020, it's less about the in-ring stuff and more about telling a good story. Even Edge and Jericho, they tried to go out there and have this great in-ring classic at WrestleMania 26, and it didn't work. 10 years ago, for the World Heavyweight Championship, it was a good match, but it wasn't a great match. I feel like Orton, who is amazing at telling stories, can go out there and tell a great story with Edge. I think it could work. And yeah, the angle they did on Raw was terrific. It was absolutely outstanding. Orton played his role great. Edge was great. His promo was heartfelt. It was emotional. It felt real. Orton's interaction with Edge, knowing their history, felt real. The swerve with a rated RKO reunion only to turn on Edge was amazing. And Orton has always been an amazing bad guy. I never really understood why they turned him face in the first place a few months ago, which was fine, but I didn't really get it. Just because he's always been a great bad guy. He was doing great work over on SmackDown as a bad guy. And he's been doing good work recently in the feuds with AJ and Drew McIntyre and stuff like that. But it didn't really feel like creatively he was doing as well as he could have been. Now this Edge feud has already solidified him as a top heel on Raw. Like that, overnight. It took 2 seconds for him to go back to being the heel of old, the Orton of old on Monday Night Raw. And it made sense, too, because McIntyre is now slowly transitioning into a babyface role on Raw. They need another top heel. Edge is back. They have way too many faces. They have I mean, I think it's more evenly distributed now with Rollins and Styles and now Orton on the heel side, and you also have Andrade and, Buddy Murphy and people like that. On the babyface side, we had Ricochet, Rey Mysterio. We now have Edge back, Joe, Owens. Who else am I not thinking of? Drew McIntyre, obviously. I know Lesnar is a top heel on Raw, but he's never really around. So they needed to turn Orton. I'm glad they did, and the feud has a lot of potential to be great. And what excites me the most about this feud is all the things they could do with it. I saw someone say that maybe Orton can show up at NXT and torment Beth Phoenix. I mean, I don't know if they would involve NXT in this thing, but they could always get Phoenix involved, knowing that, we all know that they're married in real life. They've acknowledged that on the air before at Hall of Fame ceremonies, stuff like that, so there's really nothing new there. But also they could have Christian come back. Maybe not in the ring, and I'll get to Christian later because someone else asked a question about Christian. Maybe not in the ring, but he could always come back and confront Orton, and Orton can threaten to beat him up unless Edge, saves the day or agrees to a match at WrestleMania, whatever, which would be awesome. Because, even Christian himself, not only with his history with Edge, but his history with Randy Orton from 10 years ago. Orton and Edge never really had that full-fledged feud that we're about to see going into WrestleMania. But Christian and Orton did back in 2011 over the World Heavyweight Championship. They had so many great matches. That's another another feud that I think highly of. One of my favorite feuds as a fan in the last dozen years was Orton and Christian from 2011. I love that feud so much. And to see that rekindled, maybe not with Christian in the ring, but to see Christian involved in this feud at all, I think would be great. And it's possible, too. He's been making appearances on Backstage as an analyst for months now, so he's a part of the company. He's watching the product. It's not like he's in another company or something. Like, he could absolutely show up if he wanted to on Raw in the weeks leading up to WrestleMania. FD from Facebook, his first question was, do you feel that Charlotte Flair winning the 2020 Royal Rumble means WWE is trying to push Charlotte and becoming like her father and achieving the accolades her father had, including potentially equaling the tally of women's championships won like her father with the World Championship? And also, does that win devalue NXT in pushing the brand with their diverse women's division? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that last part there in regards to NXT. I don't really know what one has to do with the other. If you're saying, does it devalue NXT that Shayna didn't win, because a lot of people thought she would, including myself, and I'm a little bummed that she didn't, but I'll explain more why in a second as to why I'm not as pissed off as many other people are. It has not. Partially it has to do with my Royal Rumble game, the fact that I picked 17 and Charlotte was 17, and I finally won my own fucking Royal Rumble game after all these years. But that's not even the whole reason. I'll get to that momentarily. The Charlotte thing, are they trying to work her way up into having her win the same amount of championships, if not more titles than her father? Absolutely. We said that back in 2016 when she won her first Raw Women's Championship, and she's already on her fucking 10th title, and it's only been 4 or 5 years. I think her SmackDown Women's Championship win back in October, the belt that she held for all of 5 days, by the way, was her 10th championship win. It meant absolutely nothing. It meant nothing. For her to win her 10th championship in 4 or 5 years, it was a fucking joke, and no one really cared, and it was over within a couple of days. So anyway, they're absolutely having her, chase the record. She will win it eventually. She will get there eventually. The Rumble thing, I'm sure, is just to add to her accolade. She was going to win a Rumble eventually. She can't go down as one of the greatest of all time without having won the Rumble at least once. Her father won the Rumble, so for them to claim that they are the first father-daughter duo to win the Royal Rumble is pretty cool. The issue is that she didn't need it. With Charlotte winning the Rumble, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just get into it now. A lot of people asked about Charlotte winning the Rumble. My thoughts on it. Where's it going? Rhea Ripley, is that an option? I think it is, and I think that's where they're going with this. I really do. Because she's not facing Becky. They cannot be so dumb. This is like when John Cena won the WWE Championship at the 2017 Royal Rumble. And he was like a fucking, 16-time champion at that point? He won the WWE Championship that same night. On that same show, Randy Orton won the Royal Rumble. And we knew Orton wasn't facing fucking Goldberg at WrestleMania or Kevin Owens or whatever. We knew he was going for the WWE Championship. We all knew. We weren't kidding ourselves. We all knew they were not going to do John Cena versus Randy Orton again. WWE could not be so stupid to do Becky and Charlotte for the millionth fucking time. They have great chemistry. I love their 2018 feud. They dragged it on way longer than they should have going into WrestleMania. They blew it off with that Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Whatever. They've had a number of matches since then. There's no reason to go on with that feud at WrestleMania. I don't think they will. I don't think they're doing Charlotte versus Bayley either. We already saw that feud beaten into the ground late last year. We've seen them feud off a million times too. There's no reason to do either feud at the WrestleMania 36 event, which leaves just the NXT Championship. Now, I've seen some people say, oh, what if she goes after the tag titles? Give me a fucking break. Charlotte is not going after the tag team titles. She's already been after the tag team titles. They got a random title shot, her and Becky, at the TLC pay-per-view, and she lost. So her challenging the Kabuki Warriors and feuding with Kairi and Asuka is nothing new. We've seen her face Asuka at WrestleMania before. She faced her before WrestleMania last year. They've had a million matches too. You know, if it was Charlotte and Asuka one-on-one and they played off their history that Asuka's never beaten Charlotte before, the same way that Becky never beat Asuka, I think that'd be pretty cool. But they're not going in that direction. Clearly, because Asuka lost at the Royal Rumble. I have no desire to see a tag team title feud with Charlotte and probably Natalya, which they were going in a couple months ago, and they switched plans to insert Becky in there instead. No desire to see that whatsoever. With that being said, Charlotte has got to challenge Rhea Ripley. And the thing is, why am I not as pissed about this as other people are? I could be sitting here ranting and raving, oh, Charlotte doesn't need it. And honestly, usually I would agree. If Roman Reigns won, so I guess the original plan was to have Shayna win the Women's Rumble and have Roman win the Men's Rumble. Honestly, I much prefer what we got on Sunday over what was the original plan. I would much prefer Roman losing and Shayna losing in favor of Charlotte winning and Drew McIntyre winning. Drew McIntyre winning is way more important than Shayna Baszler winning. And yeah, Shayna is a fresh face. You know, she's an up-and-coming star. She's obviously going to be involved in the championship picture of WrestleMania. But that's just it. She doesn't need the Rumble victory. They can explain her and Becky feuding over that Raw Women's Championship without having Shayna win the Rumble. She's already done in NXT. She pinned fucking Bayley in that triple threat match at Survivor Series a couple months ago at November. And Becky was involved. She owns a victory over Becky Lynch. She's ready to be called up. She has history with Becky through Ronda Rousey. It just makes the most sense. Do you even need to have her win the Rumble? Charlotte versus Rhea would make absolutely no sense if Charlotte didn't win the Rumble. I'm not advocating or defending the decision to have Charlotte win. I'm really not. But for whatever reason, even putting aside the fact that I won my women's Royal Rumble game, my women's Rumble pool at number 17, even putting that aside, I didn't hate this as much as many other people did. I'm going to be honest with you. Did she need it? Absolutely not, but they're going to make it make sense. You know, if she faces Becky, then I take back what I just said. But if she faces Rhea Ripley, then it makes sense. Because there's no one else for Charlotte to face. And let's face it, again, I'm not defending this idea here, but Charlotte is the face of their women's division. You could say it's Becky all you fucking want, but Charlotte has never been in anything less than a marquee match for the women at every WrestleMania they've had so far. Her WrestleMania debut, WrestleMania 32, what was she a part of? The first ever Raw Women's Championship triple threat match that she won, where she walked out as the all-new Raw Women's Champion. Great triple threat match. The following year, 33, wasn't a marquee match, but she was still involved in the Raw Women's Championship match at WrestleMania 33. Lost, but she was still involved. 34, beat Asuka, to retain her SmackDown Women's Championship and retain her title against the undefeated Asuka, handing her first, loss in WWE at that point. Big match, great match, whatever, still a big match for her to be involved in. WrestleMania 35, she was in the fucking main event. She lost. She didn't get pinned, but she lost. Charlotte will never, ever be relegated to the kickoff show. You will never see Charlotte caught dead in that fucking WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal. That means absolutely nothing. Bayley, Banks, Becky, Naomi, you name it, it doesn't matter. They will put any of those women in there. Never Charlotte, though. That's just never going to happen. So if you don't have Charlotte face Ripley, what do you do with her? Have her challenge for the tag titles? Give me a fucking break. They can put her in a multi-women title match at WrestleMania, like for the Raw Women's Championship or something. Never a tag team title match. I highly doubt we would see Charlotte and Natalya win there with like the fire and desire and Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. I just don't see that happening. Her and Ripley, I think, is honestly set in stone. I really don't see where else they would be going with this unless they do a complete 180 between now and WrestleMania and they have someone, like Lacey win the SmackDown Women's Championship and she faces Lacey, but then what do you do with Bayley and Sasha? Do you put them back in the tag title picture? I don't know. But Yeah, no, I honestly don't even really hate it. They are definitely trying to have her catch up to her dad, which is bullshit. She didn't need the Rumble victory. Sheena would have been even cooler. But with Charlotte, though, they need to have her do something at WrestleMania. I mean, in their eyes, they're going to have her do something important. And there's no way she can have an important match at WrestleMania unless she wins the Rumble. Because it's not even like, oh, she has to be in a championship match at WrestleMania. She really doesn't. I mean, she had that great match with Trish Stratus at SummerSlam that had no championship on the line, and yet it was one of the better matches of the entire show. There was just a story being told there that was really, really good. Now, unfortunately, they don't really have any of those stories worth being told right now with Charlotte and the rest of the women in the women's division on either show. That's the problem. I mean, they have a lot of great women, but they're not putting enough focus on these women that allow them to have like just a random match at WrestleMania that's not for a championship. Charlotte versus anyone in the main roster right now is not appealing at all. We've seen her face all 4 members of the 4 Horsewomen a million times: Bayley, Becky, and Sasha. She's never feuded with Lacey, and at some point that may work. I just don't think that's WrestleMania worthy right now. We've seen her and Natalya a million times. Her and Asuka a bunch of times. Her and Kairi Sane is not going to happen at WrestleMania. Who else even is there? Her and Alexa Bliss? I mean, she's got to face Rhea Ripley. It's the only match that makes sense. So, while honestly, I don't really hate the idea. I mean, it wasn't my favorite decision on Sunday. I thought it was bullshit too. But the more I think about it, the more I honestly don't even really mind it. FD's second question: do you feel the outcome of the women's Royal Rumble, match last weekend would be a lot different had Sasha Banks not been hurt and occupied the spot that Santina Marella had last weekend? Also, Santina Marella entered the women's Rumble match last weekend. Was it a wasted opportunity, or was there some reasoning for that? Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. First, with the outcome of the women's Rumble, would it have been different if Sasha was involved? No. Sasha, I don't think, was ever going to win the Rumble. I think it was either down to Sheena or, I mean, I don't work there, so I don't know, but I'm just saying it's kind of common sense. I know they might have Sasha face Bayley, but again, that's a story you can tell without having Banks win the Rumble. It would have been cool if she won, don't get me wrong. Banks hasn't really won many important matches in a long time. So it would have been nice and probably even better than Charlotte winning. I just didn't really even see that as a possibility. I thought Ronda coming back was a bigger possibility than that, and even I thought that was a long shot because I don't see Ronda Rousey coming back at the Rumble anytime soon, not even in 2020. I really don't. So if Sasha was involved, reportedly she's hurt. What else is new? Samoa Joe's getting hurt a lot too, so I can't even knock Sasha. It's not like, oh, Sasha's so injury prone, and then like, oh, push Samoa Joe. Like, I'm not gonna be a hypocrite here, but you know, it sucks. She's really talented, and she just keeps on getting hurt, which makes sense. I mean, I kind of figured that when she didn't come out in the Rumble, it doesn't take a genius to figure out she's probably hurt because they advertised her and Lacey 2 weeks in a row, and she wasn't cleared either time. She never even got physical. So clearly she's dealing with some sort of an injury. Hopefully it clears up soon and she's healed soon so she can go at WrestleMania. But anyway, I don't think if Sasha was in there, she would have won at all. I don't think she was even supposed to take the spot of Santina, whatever. I had read, again, take this with a grain of salt, that Sasha Banks would have been in the match instead of Kelly Kelly. Which makes sense. Kelly Kelly was already in it 2 years ago, and yeah, so was Mighty Molly, but Kelly Kelly just, I don't know, not that it hurt the match or helped the match or whatever. I can absolutely see that being the case. Either her or Xia Li. Xia Li was in it last year too. And not just because you were in it last year doesn't mean that you absolutely shouldn't be in it this year. Like, I don't mind seeing familiar faces again, like Candice was in there twice. I didn't really mind that. I love Candice. But just Xia Li is not really an important part of the women's division down in NXT at all. So to see her in there twice just seemed kind of random. But anyway, when it comes to, what was I even talking about? The spot? Yeah, so Kelly taking Sasha's spot because Sasha was hurt makes sense. The Santina Marella thing. So here is what I have to say about this. If you were offended by it, that's totally fine. I'm not going to sit here and say you're a moron for hating it or for liking it. I'm not that type of person. I try not to be. Maybe I've let it slip. I've let it slip here or there over the last couple of years when it comes to like, oh, if you like this, you're just an absolute moron when it comes to some of the stuff they do here on the WWE product. But hey, I watch all of it. I enjoy most of it. Who am I to say? For the Santina thing, I liked it a lot. Honestly, it was one of the highlights of the match for me. And here's the thing. Someone else asked me about Santina too a little later on. I'll get to it later, I guess. We'll just kind of we'll just merge the two questions in one. Let me scroll down real quick. Scarlet One also asked a similar question. They said, what did you think about the Santina storyline from 2009 when you first saw it? So I'll merge all of this into one question. When it comes to Santina's involvement in the Royal Rumble, I fucking loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I was dying. I was laughing my ass off when I saw that shit. And I am not someone who enjoyed the character to begin with. I thought the character sucked. Honestly, I was as angry as anyone. Only being a year into my WWE fandom back in 2009, I was as pissed as anyone when that whole Santina garbage started. And they had her win that WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal. Before the WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal, there was the Miss WrestleMania Battle Royal at WrestleMania 25. And it was won by Santina fucking Marella. It was the dumbest thing. But you know what? It was so dumb, they got through it in like 2 months or so, which lasted way longer than it should have, don't get me wrong. But just to see it back, to see Santino back, I was hoping that he would be in the men's rumble, but to see him pop up as Santina, which was one of the dumbest characters they ever did. Here's another example. Was never the biggest Hornswoggle fan. I was always hoping he would get released or leave the company. I was never really the biggest Hornswoggle fan ever. But when he popped up at the Royal Rumble last year in the Women's Rumble, I thought it was great. I thought it was hilarious. I mean, he wasn't an entrant, but he ran off. He chased off Zelina Vega, then he chased her off to the back or whatever. No one was complaining about that from what I saw. And this one, people are complaining because he took a spot away from someone else. First of all, the whole idea that he took a spot away from another woman makes absolutely no sense. I understand where people are coming from with that, but the idea, if you want to say that he wasted his spot, I get it. But people are so outraged over this thing. It's ridiculous. I'm not saying you have to like it, because it was stupid. I thought it was hilarious. I hate the Santina character. I thought it was so dumb. In retrospect, it was so dumb to me that it was funny. He didn't go in there and win the whole thing like he won the Battle Royal 10 years ago. It made sense. Beth Phoenix was in there. They were in Houston. We haven't seen Santino on WWE TV in forever in an in-ring role. He hasn't wrestled a match in like 5 or 6 years. I thought it was funny as hell. The Cobra thing was funny. If you want to say that he wasted a spot, sure. I thought it was a cool comedy spot. People are like, oh, you're fucking sexist if you want to call it a cool comedy spot. Like, get the fuck... If you want to go that route, then shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. You don't have to like it, but if you're going to call out other people for being, oh, you're sexist if you like Santina being in the Rumble, shut the fuck up. Where were those people when Nia Jax was in the men's Rumble last year? Not the biggest Nia Jax fan, but I get why they did it, and who cares? Chyna, Karma, Beth, Nia Jax have all been in the men's Rumble. Was anyone saying at that point, oh, that's a waste of a spot? Fucking Apollo Crews should have been in there instead. Or fucking Zack Ryder. You know what? Zack Ryder has been in the company for over 10 years. He deserves a spot in the Royal Rumble. Why wasn't he in there, but Nia Jax was? No one was saying that. I mean, do I want Nia Jax in the Rumble? Not really. But it's not that big of a deal. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, she took a spot away from this person. Honestly, it was a fun comedy spot. I would rather have Santina in there, and this is going to rile some feathers. I would rather have Santina in there than the Iconics, who aren't going to do anything, and I don't give a shit about them. WWE hasn't put them on their show. I'm honestly shocked they weren't in there. I would have taken a Xia Li or someone like that who was already in the Rumble before. She really served no purpose. She's not a big star, so it didn't really accomplish anything. Chelsea Green was kind of cool, but she was gone in like 10 seconds. That was kind of a waste. You want to talk about a waste? That was a waste of a spot. The Santina thing was at least funny, and people know who she is. They were in Houston. She has history with Beth Phoenix, or she, whatever. The transphobe thing, I don't really get that. People are calling Santino a transphobe just because he doesn't like intergender wrestling. I mean, maybe I got to go reread the interview again, but the last time I saw that interview when people were talking about how he was a transphobe because he's not an intergender wrestling fan, how it doesn't make sense for a man to fight a woman, he's absolutely right. It just doesn't. It's a fact. I mean, in the right situation, yeah, like with Tessa and Sammy, it makes sense. But in like Becky, for Becky to face Brock Lesnar, it's just fucking stupid. Like let's say Charlotte said, oh, I'm going to go after the NXT Men's Championship at WrestleMania. I want to face Adam Cole. It's silly. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe not. Adam Cole might make a little more sense, because he's smaller, but he's been built up so strongly to think that Charlotte would have a chance of beating him in a WWE legitimate match is a joke. Especially not Brock or Bray, I'll say that much. So anyway, there was a lot of outrage I saw regarding the Santina thing. If you didn't like the spot, if you thought it was a waste, like Alexis didn't even know who Santina was. So obviously she's going to think it was a waste of a spot. I was a fan back then. A lot of people were. I thought it was dumb funny. I was never the biggest Santino fan, but I thought for them to acknowledge a mistake from their past and to just do it for a quick second. They didn't drag it on for longer than it needed to. They didn't have him come out at number 30. He didn't win the whole thing. It was a dumb spot. They do this shit all the fucking time. Jeff Jarrett served no purpose in the 2019 Rumble. He was in there for no more than a minute before Elias chucked him out. But it was still funny. It was fucking hilarious because of his, the same type of character that him and Elias play. It was a waste of having The Godfather back in 2013. He was in there for all of 8 seconds or whatever. But it was still funny as hell. So, I don't know. This whole thing about, you need to have everyone who's earned their spot be in the Rumble. No, that's not true at all. That's not true. In a perfect world, maybe. But it's all about entertainment. It's more about than just giving people what they deserve. That if you're the same person that's saying that, then you must be of the same mindset that everybody has to have a match at WrestleMania because everyone deserves a spot. No, you do the matches that make sense. I'm not saying that Santina deserved it or that she made sense to be in the Rumble, but it was a funny comedy spot that it was over in 30 seconds. Get over it. If you didn't laugh, that's not that big of a deal, but Jesus, to go off, and I saw so many people raging about how Santina's a disgrace. He was around for 2 months. Kelly didn't do shit for the Divas division. She got better. She was champion for a couple of months back in 2011. That's it. Didn't see anyone shitting on that. Kelly fucking sucked back in the day. People fucking hated her guts. But those same people that were pooping on Santina being in the Women's Rumble are the same people that are like, oh my God, it's so cool to see Kelly back. Sit the fuck down. Next question comes from, also from FD. In honor of the tragic passing of Kobe Bryant recently, what are some of your favorite moments and memories you remembered with the Black Mamba himself? I mean, none. I'm not a basketball fan, but it was really sad to hear that he passed. I was shocked as anyone. The guy was 41 years old, died in a helicopter crash with his daughter and a few other people who should be remembered as well. The whole thing was just terrible. Absolutely awful incident. So I learned about that a couple minutes after it happened. Not after it happened, but after the news broke on TMZ. My buddy Richie, who I actually saw at the Northeast Wrestling Show on Saturday, texted me the news about Kobe Bryant. I was shocked. Again, I'm not a basketball fan, but everyone, for the most part, knows who Kobe Bryant is. I was one of the greatest of all time. So I have no favorite memories or moments because I'm not a basketball fan. I don't know if I've ever seen one game with him in it. But very, very sad passing. My thoughts, prayers, condolences with the family, friends, fans, everyone who knew Kobe, loved Kobe, knew him personally as a fan, whatever. Just an absolutely terrible tragedy. That type of stuff should absolutely never happen. You hear about that stuff happening, once in a while, this plane crashed, and the chances of that stuff happening are so slim. I was thinking about this on Sunday after I heard that news, and I was talking to Alexis about it. You know how likely it is, for all the planes that the WWE wrestlers go on every fucking day? You know have you ever thought about, what if one of these planes crashed? The entire roster's dead. Maybe not everybody, but, let's say the Raw roster is going overseas for a tour. The plane crashes. Everyone dies. The entire Raw roster is dead. You know what I'm saying? That's such a terrible thing to even think or say. But, that's never happened before, when it very well could have. If it's happened to a guy like Kobe Bryant, I'm not saying live in fear, obviously. No, that's not meant to be a reference to Bray Wyatt's old theme song. But what I'm saying is, they take planes all the time, and something like that has almost never happened. I think that Sheamus was involved in a plane that had to go down a couple years ago, and they were all safe. Or, Ric Flair was involved in a plane crash decades ago, earlier on in his career, and he survived. This type of stuff could absolutely happen, and it just never has. Which goes to show how small the chances are of stuff like that happening in, this day and age, because technology, when it comes to that type of stuff, is usually pretty good. It's safe. Most people wouldn't travel if this stuff happened all the time. I know he was in a helicopter, not a plane, but even helicopters are usually pretty safe. It was just a freak accident. It was a fog thing. I don't know if anyone was at fault for it. It was just a really awful thing. Those type of things can really happen at any time. I'm not saying, again, it's likely, but anything can happen, good, bad, or indifferent. So the biggest takeaway from all of this, first of all, it sucks. Second of all, is to always tell people that you love them. Never, take anyone for granted. We hear that all the time, but it's not until stuff like when this type of stuff happens that it hits home. It's like, holy shit, like I could lose my parents, my family, my girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband, whatever, and something that could happen like this. You never actually know. So you should always tell people you love them and never take anything or anyone for granted. And it's just an absolutely awful tragedy. Again, my thoughts, prayers, and condolences are with the family of Kobe Bryant and the fans as well, and everyone else who was a part of that terrible, terrible tragedy on Sunday. At noob_n_co 1991, what do you think of the return of Edge and other superstars from the Ruthless Aggression era? I would assume that's all you said. I'm not sure if you meant, like, who else would you like to see return, because you also said we might see Kelly, Victoria, or Melina. Not exactly sure what you mean by your question there. Seeing Edge back was awesome. I already discussed that earlier. The Ruthless Aggression era thing, if you're talking about, like, Kelly being back, John Morrison, Shelton Benjamin, MVP we saw on Sunday, which I thought was cool. Not that I grew up. My definition of the Ruthless Aggression era is 02 to 05. Anything beyond that, it may not be the PG era, but I constitute that as a different era. Maybe 02 to 07. So maybe, I guess you could kind of say they were part of the Ruthless Aggression era. But anyway, it was cool to see all those people back. You mentioned Victoria and Melina. I guess they were rumored to be in the Women's Rumble, but they weren't for whatever reason. Melina, I would assume, wasn't in there because on Sunday they were taping Power, the NWA Power show. She was a part of the taping. She was on the show last night, and they recorded it on Sunday. And I know they didn't record it on Saturday because I was at the Northeast Wrestling Show on Saturday, and Marty Scurll was there, as was a few other people from the NWA roster. So there was no chance they were doing it on Saturday. They did it on Sunday. And Melina probably just had a prior booking commitment with the NWA thing, because if you miss one NWA taping, you're gone from the whole set of tapings because they tape all in one day leading up for the next month or two. So I think that's probably why she wasn't in the Rumble. Plus, I'm not even sure if she could, because she's in the NWA. So could she contractually? I'm not sure. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not really sure. But with Victoria, there's no excuse to not have her in there. Unless something came up with her at the last minute where she couldn't make it. I know she retired from the ring late last year. She's been holding on to the idea of a WWE return for years now. They never brought her back. Apparently there was heat on her at one point for whatever reason. She said something stupid on Twitter and they never invited her back. I don't know what the reason was. She doesn't even know what the reason was. It's all petty bullshit. But they never brought her back even after she left TNA in 2013. She's been a free agent now for fucking 7 years. 6-7 years, and they never brought her back once. You would see her in the crowd for Hall of Fame ceremonies and stuff, but never actually in the ring when she should be in there for like the Women's Rumble and stuff like that. I thought that was very disgraceful to not have her be a part of that, or the second one, or even this year. So anyway, it would be cool to see her back. I was actually hoping she would be back. I was listening to her theme song on Friday, thinking about how cool it would be to hear that music again and to see her back. Unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be. Maybe another year, but never say never. I know she retired, but hey, if WWE came calling for a Rumble return for her, I'm sure she would take that in a heartbeat. And I saw a picture of them testing out her Titantron footage during rehearsals the day before. So clearly at one point she was penciled in to be a part of the match. Something must have changed, or they changed plans or whatever. I'm not exactly sure what the reasoning was. She hasn't come out and said anything about it, so I don't know. But it looked like she was set to be a part of it, and it wasn't a random thing either, because we also saw footage for MVP's entrance, and he ended up coming back. So, yeah, I mean, it's very possible that she was supposed to be there, and they either nixed it at the last minute, or she had some sort of issue where she couldn't make it. I know she was on the Jericho cruise, but so was MVP, and he was there, so I'm not really sure what went wrong with the Victoria Rumble return. Their next question here, who will face Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship, and who will face the Kabuki Warriors for the Women's Tag Team titles at WrestleMania? Bayley, I assume, is facing Sasha, assuming that she's, healthy enough to face Bayley for the belt at WrestleMania. I assume they're doing Bayley and Banks because nothing else makes remote sense at all. Remotely makes the slightest bit of sense. Lacey, I guess I could see being involved, and she's getting over as a babyface, but I don't really need to see her in a WrestleMania match for the championship at this current point. For the tag titles, it's going to be, I guarantee you, some sort of thrown-together women's tag team title match with the Kabuki Warriors, Fire and Desire, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, and probably some other random tag team. The Iconics, maybe? I don't know. The same type of shit they've been doing. Isn't that the same exact match they did the fucking SummerSlam before, or the Raw before SummerSlam? It might actually be the exact same four-way where Alexa Bliss and Nikki won the tag team titles. I think it was those same four teams. They've added no new teams since then. And it's only been those four teams fighting for the titles. I know they had Charlotte and Becky at one point. That went nowhere. I mean, it was obviously a one-time thing for the TLC pay-per-view. But anyway, that's probably what it'll end up being, which sucks because Asuka should be on the main card. I assume that match gets bumped to the kickoff show. I know last year's four-way wasn't on the kickoff show. It was on the main card. It was on the main card. But that's because you had Sasha and Bayley involved and the returning Beth Phoenix. If you have those four teams involved fighting for the tag titles of WrestleMania, I guarantee you it's ending up on the kickoff show. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter, with Edge back, what new feuds would you like to see him have? That's a good question. First of all, congrats to Jeremy, who won the 2019, or rather the 2020 Men's Royal Rumble game. I won the women's one, but I'm giving my t-shirt to the runner-up. I'm giving them a Shayna Baszler t-shirt. Jeremy's already picked a Drew McIntyre shirt, so I got to send those out soon. But congrats to Jeremy for winning this year's Royal Rumble game, which is pretty fucking cool. Anyway, so to answer the 2020 Royal Rumble game winner's question, what new feuds with Edge would I like to see him have? There's a lot. AJ Styles, to me, comes across as the biggest, I hate to say dream matches. AJ Styles comes close. I would say Rollins is number one, because I've always thought of Rollins as a modern-day Edge. Like, he can play a great good guy, but he's also a great bad, like, he's an even better bad guy. Especially back, 4 or 5 years ago, when he was doing everything to elicit heat. He was getting that Edge type of heat from like 2005. He had the Money in the Bank briefcase. He was the ultimate asshole. Had great matches with John Cena, a lot like Edge. Won almost every championship imaginable, a lot like Edge. Could have a great match with a lot of different people, a lot like Edge. So, I see a lot of similarities between the two there, and Edge is back as a babyface. Rollins is still a hated heel on Raw. So Edge and Rollins, to me, has got to be inevitable. That, to me, sounds like a WrestleMania match. Him and AJ, like I said, would be pretty damn cool, considering that AJ was in TNA the entire time that Edge was at his peak in WWE. So to see those two worlds collide in an official one-on-one match would be awesome. Edge really versus anyone would be great. So AJ, him and Joe would be cool. They can make this shit work with pretty much anyone. Owens, Daniel Bryan, I think would be awesome. Him and, maybe not Bray Wyatt, but I don't know. There's a lot of different people I think he could face. I know they, teased doing him and Miz all those years ago. They had a couple matches back in 2010, 2011. They had good chemistry. I'm not sure they can go back to that with Miz being on SmackDown unless they switch Edge over to SmackDown. But again, honestly, anybody. Aleister Black, Buddy Murphy, all the new guys, Roman Reigns, the Battle of the Spears. They had good chemistry in the Royal Rumble match on Sunday. So there's a lot of people I would like to see step in the ring with Edge. And even if he is having a few matches a year on like a Brock Lesnar type deal, I could see them increasing the amount of matches he could have, a lot like Brock. Like, he was only supposed to wrestle like 2 or 3 times a year. WrestleMania, SummerSlam, maybe one other pay-per-view, and that's it. But Brock has moved on to having way more pay-per-view matches than that, and then house shows and shit like that. So I could absolutely see Edge being back for more matches than just a handful each year, and hopefully it's with the people that I mentioned. Jeremy's next question here: do you think Christian should get one final run in WWE? I do. I mean, of course, I'm biased because I'm a big Christian guy. And again, maybe they never brought him back initially because the concussions and he can't be cleared, whatever. But maybe that's changed. Maybe that's changed now that Daniel Bryan's back and Edge is back. I'm not sure Christian is itching to get back in the ring for WWE. But then again, I thought the exact same thing about Edge. I thought he was the type of person that would be content with retirement, just enjoying the fruits of his labor. And obviously he's back now. And Christian was never an Edge in terms of star power. But it would be cool to see him back at least one more time and to see him and Edge reunite one last time in the ring. And that was supposed to be the feud, Edge and Christian over the World Heavyweight Championship in 2011 before Edge he had to retire. So they transitioned into Orton and Christian instead, which is pretty cool. So anyway, seeing Christian back for one more run would be awesome. Maybe not wrestling every week type of run, but like a one-off match with Edge. Like Edge and Christian versus Orton and, I don't know, AJ Styles or something like that would be pretty cool. I know they just had a whole feud, but something along those lines I think would be pretty cool. I know it's not happening, but it's possible now that we could finally, after all these years, see a triple threat TLC rematch. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that the chances of this happening are so slim. But you never know. That we could see a triple threat TLC rematch with Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys, and the Dudleys. The Dudleys, Devon's still in WWE. I met him a couple months ago. He told me when I talked to him that he's ready to go at any time. He could wrestle tomorrow if he wanted to. There's just no reason for him to. But if Bubba Ray came back, who's in Ring of Honor right now, he appeared on the bump today. So Bully, or rather Bubba and Devon, could be back for one more run. The Hardy Boys are currently in WWE. Matt Hardy is probably on his way out. I think he's staying ultimately, but he could be on his way out, so that might put that in jeopardy. But the Hardy Boys are back in WWE. And Edge and Christian, Edge is back in the ring, and Christian maybe could possibly wrestle again. So again, it's a long shot. There's a few things that would have to happen. Jeff Hardy would have to be healthy. Matt Hardy would have to stay. Bubba Ray would have to come back. Devon would have to come out of retirement, and Christian would also have to come out of retirement for this to happen. But it's a lot more likely than Edge ever coming back, and he did. So you never really know. Next question comes from at Scarlet One. We'll finish off with their questions here. Best and worst of the Wednesday Night Wars, number 15 from last week. That feels like a millennium ago at this point. Best of NXT, I enjoyed the main event of Roderick Strong versus Keith Lee for the NXT North American Championship. I thought they had very good chemistry. Love the title change. The two Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic matches were a lot of fun as well. It was Grizzled Young Vets versus Undisputed Era. Then the other match was Imperium versus Matt Riddle and Pete Dunne. Looking forward to the finals tonight. On Dynamite, the whole show was fun. I enjoyed the tag team title match with SEU losing the belts to Adam Page, Hangman Adam Page, and Kenny Omega. Great opener. And the main event was also really good between Moxley and Pac. The whole, ship setting I thought was great. I talked about that last week a little bit leading up to the show. And I thought overall it was executed very well. The worst of each show, there really wasn't much in NXT that I hated. Same thing with Dynamite. If I had to nitpick, from NXT, Balor and Joaquin Wilde, Finn Balor versus Joaquin Wilde, I didn't really care about the match. I like Finn Balor. It was obviously designed to be a standard squash match for Balor. This Wilde does nothing for me. I like DJZ. The guy's a really good wrestler. Cool to see him in WWE. The whole the DJZ shit that he was doing in TNA, he's trying to do it in WWE. It doesn't work. Either do it and turn heel or don't do it at all because it's so obnoxious. He just looks like a guy I want to hate. So they got to turn him heel or do something because it's just not working. In AEW on Dynamite, I thought the Britt Baker versus Priscilla Kelly match absolutely sucked. It was not good at all. It was okay, but her post-match promo was terrible. Britt Baker's not as good as I thought she was. I'm not saying that I thought she was this amazing in-ring wrestler, but she has not exactly improved at the rate that I thought she would. She's a good character. She has a good presence about her. But in the ring, we have yet to see one truly above-average match involving her. She's just not that good, and her promos are even worse. So, that really was not that good of a match. Best and worst of the Royal Rumble and Worlds Collide. Worlds Collide really was nothing bad about it at all. I thought Rhea Ripley and Toni Storm was easily the weakest match on the show. It wasn't that good of a match. So that would probably be the worst of that show, but the DIY versus Mustache Mountain match was amazing. Imperium versus Undisputed Era in the main event was great. The Cruiserweight 4-way opener, not opener, but for the Cruiserweight title was fantastic. And then also the opener with Ilya Dragunov and Finn Balor was also very, very good. Royal Rumble, the two Rumble matches I thought were great. Two of the better Rumbles in recent memory, I thought. Both were terrific. Bray Wyatt and Daniel Bryan was much better than I thought it would be. I enjoyed that match. Sheamus and Shorty G and then Andrade and Korea were good. They weren't really great, but thankfully they were relegated to the kickoff show. What else did we have? There was Becky Lynch and Asuka. How could I forget? They had a great match. Really, the only match I didn't care for, even Roman and Corbin I thought was solid and enjoyable. The only match I didn't really care for was Bayley and Lacey Evans. I thought that match was very underwhelming. The finish sucked. So other than that, I thought the Royal Rumble show overall was very good. I already talked about the Santina stuff. Did you hear about Daniel Bryan's new eco-friendly t-shirt? I did, and about how I think for every t-shirt bought, $1 goes to planting a new tree or something like that. Bryan talked about this in an interview not too long ago, about how he wanted to do this, but WWE said no. But he finally apparently convinced them to do it because they came out with this new shirt like a week ago. But he was talking about this in interviews as of a couple weeks ago, saying that he wanted to do it and WWE said no, or they didn't want to, or it would be a whole hassle. But he convinced them. It was probably the interview thing that helped push it over the edge and help make it happen. But it's finally happening. It's a cool shirt too, so that only helps. But yeah, I guess Brian had said that WWE did not want him to reference the environment at all because people associated that with his heel run. So they didn't want to confuse people by having him bring up the environment. He's like, bullshit. Fuck that. And he had the Planet's Champion put on the back of the shirt, which is hilarious because, again, they only want to call him that if he's a heel, doing the whole gimmick that he was a year ago. But I don't think people are confused. If he's doing the yes chant and he's acting like a babyface, I really don't think it matters. So I like the new t-shirt. Maybe I'll buy one at some point. I know Alexa said that she wanted one, so maybe I'll get her one at some point. We'll see. But anyway, did you hear about Brock Lesnar and Matt Riddle's backstage argument where Lesnar apparently told Riddle they would never work together? I did hear about that courtesy of Pro Wrestling Sheet. I think PW Insider confirmed the report later on. I did hear about that. I would not doubt that for a second. The Goldberg thing proved to be true. There's actually video of that. I would love a confrontation between Brock and Riddle. I would love to see the video of the confrontation between Brock and Riddle. And a confrontation, like a one-on-one match, but it sounds like that's never going to happen. So Brock getting mad at Riddle for calling him out, how the fuck would Brock know? Brock seems like the type of guy that's never on the internet. He doesn't talk to anybody. He doesn't read interviews. He doesn't give a fuck. So why would he... I mean, I'm not denying that it happened because I'm sure it did, but I'm trying to understand how Brock Lesnar got word of who the hell even Matt Riddle is. How did he even find out that Matt Riddle has been talking shit about him for so long? You know, Matt Riddle's been saying this for a long time that he wants to be the one to retire Brock Lesnar. It's never going to happen, especially after this, but Brock would never let that happen. I'm just curious who snitched to Brock Lesnar about Matt Riddle, because there's no way he's on his phone reading this shit or checking his Twitter. I'm sure he hasn't even logged into that Brock Lesnar Twitter account once. I'm sure it's all some WWE, some fucking loser down the totem pole over there, controlling the tweets on his timeline. So I would love to know, but I did hear about that, and it was just humorous to hear about because Matt Riddle apparently has a lot of heat in WWE. That does not surprise me at all. He tweets a lot of stuff that would definitely rub people the wrong way. There were reports a year ago about the Goldberg thing and how that kind of pissed some people off, including Goldberg himself, and how maybe Goldberg told Brock. Maybe that's who it was because he's close with Goldberg. I know, because I know Brock and Goldberg are very close, very good friends outside the ring. So maybe that's who it was, and that would make complete sense. But what was I even saying? Oh, Matt Riddle, there were reports about a year ago that people wouldn't give him a ride to the PC. He was calling people out on his Twitter. The guy has a very controversial demeanor about him. But, hey, I'm a big Matt Riddle fan. I would love to see Matt Riddle and Brock. I'm honestly shocked they didn't put him in there and just have Matt Riddle get shucked over the top rope in 10 seconds. I said this how many times, people, that Matt Riddle would be in the Rumble for no more than 10 seconds. Obviously, I was wrong. He was in there for 40 seconds, but that's not much better. Their next question, did you hear about Sammy Guevara's invasion? Sammy Guevara's invasion on the Royal Rumble. Yeah, he was outside the Royal Rumble arena on Sunday in like a little mini tank truck, kind of mocking the DX invasion from all those years ago, which is pretty funny. I didn't see any video of it, and I didn't hear anything else about it. I just thought it was a funny thing. It sounds like something that he would do. Thoughts on Andrade's suspension and how it came within the same week of he and Charlotte starting a fitness channel on YouTube. What are the odds of that? We don't even know what he was busted for. Maybe it was roids. Maybe it was fucking Adderall. Like, we hear stories like this all the time where people don't get back to WWE on certain things in terms of, like, getting a piss test. If you don't get it in to the company by a certain time frame, then you're automatically suspended. It's a weird system. I like the wellness policy, but when it comes to stuff like that, it's a very weird, flawed system. So maybe that's what happened. We have no idea. The idea to not take the championship off of him, I agree with people that it's like one of those things where, yes, it's double standards. You know what? Actually, they've done this shit before, though. They have done this shit before where they don't always take the championship off of someone, even if they're suspended. Air Boom comes to mind. The second time they did, they couldn't deny it then. But when Evan Bourne got busted for, I believe, synthetic marijuana in late 2011, he and Kofi kept the tag titles. Kofi did like Superstars matches in Evan Bourne's absence, but they held on to the tag titles. They were never stripped. It was only after he got suspended again for 60 days did he, what was I going to say? That he had the championships taken away from him because, he was going to be gone for 2 months. There was no way that you can deny it at that point. So they took the championships off of Kofi and Evan. But, yeah, so with Andrade, it doesn't surprise me. It's only 30 days. I'm trying to think of another time where someone got suspended and they had to lose a championship. Fucking Roman Reigns. I mean, he's different because he's one of their guys, but he lost the championship to Rollins and then to Ambrose. That's probably what they were going for the entire time anyway. And then Roman came back in the WWE Championship match at Battleground a month later. So his suspension hardly mattered. In the case of Andrade, they clearly have bigger plans for him as champion. So I know people are like, oh, it's double standards. They should have had him drop the title. Humberto winning it at this point wouldn't really mean anything because they haven't really built it up that much. They really haven't built it up that much, to be honest with you. I think Andrade should hold on to the belt till WrestleMania and lose it to Aleister Black there. That's my big prediction. That's what I would like to say. Unless Aleister's getting some other big sort of marquee match at WrestleMania that we're not aware of, I think Black and Andrade for the third time over WrestleMania weekend, with the other two times being in 2017 and 2018 in NXT, would be pretty cool. But yeah, the whole thing about him being suspended, oh, it's double standards, he's dating Charlotte, that's why he didn't have the championship taken away. Not necessarily. I mean, just from a storyline standpoint, it just makes sense for him to not drop the championship. So I know you want to punish people, but I don't know. I don't really, it doesn't really matter to me either way, to be honest with you. Thoughts on AJ Styles and now potentially Samoa Joe getting injured? It sucks. I mean, it's the absolute worst time to get injured. It's WrestleMania season. It would be awful for either one of them to be out on a WrestleMania paycheck because they were both hurt. Joe, I think his injury is legit. I think it was a concussion thing. That's not good. AJ, I believe, had a separated shoulder. After Edge speared him, he flipped upside down. He landed right on his shoulder, which sucks. So he might be out through WrestleMania, which is absolutely awful if true. Joe, I don't know what his timetable is. I don't know if he's actually hurt. We know nothing about Samoa Joe at this current point. Samoa Joe, he has zero chance of ever winning a world championship in WWE. Just because, he's been hurt so often. Why would any company put a top championship on him at this point? Because he gets hurt all the time. And I love Joe, don't get me wrong, but the guy's proven to be a liability. He's proven to not be reliable in terms of being, in terms of a top guy, because whenever he gets hot, he always gets hurt. He always gets injured. AJ doesn't really get hurt nearly as much, but it does suck to see him probably miss his first WrestleMania. The timing could not be worse. I mean, he's been consistently involved in some of the best matches in recent WrestleMania history. Maybe not the Nakamura. That may not be true because the Orton match was good, but it wasn't the best match on the WrestleMania card. The Nakamura match was a disappointment, but I thought it was still pretty good. It wasn't as amazing as we thought it would be, but it was still pretty good. The Shane match was great, and the Jericho match was also very good from WrestleMania 32. So that being said, it would be a shame if he missed out this year. There's a lot of potential possibilities for him at the event in terms of who he could face, what he could do, stuff like that. So hopefully it's not serious and both guys are back soon, but I'm not holding my breath. Thoughts on the rumor going around that Charlotte could be challenging for the NXT used to be Women's Championship. I already talked about that earlier, about Charlotte and Rhea Ripley. I think it's a good idea. I see no other match at Mania that makes sense for Charlotte other than that match versus Rhea Ripley. So, I have no issue with it. The whole NXT Championship, NXT Women's Championship thing, I think I might have mentioned this last week. I think it's stupid, to be honest with you. I'm not a fan of it. I think it's not confusing, but like you can't have the same name for two different titles. It's just stupid. I'm not a fan of it. I'm honestly, I'm going to continue to call the NXT Women's Championship. I really will. I have no inclination of calling it. Unless it's like a review in written form or whatever. That's a little different. Here on like the shows and shit, I'm still going to call the NXT Women's Championship because otherwise it's fucking bizarre and it's confusing. At RJ RJ_Marceau from Twitter, his first question was, do you think Charlotte challenging Rhea Ripley is the best match of WrestleMania and help NXT get more attention? I already talked about this a million times, but I think she is facing Ripley. I think it does give NXT more attention as long as Rhea wins. That's the thing. I hope Rhea wins. That's the caveat there, because for Rhea to come in, get this huge push, and then lose to Charlotte of all people at WrestleMania is a fucking joke. I have no desire to see Charlotte full time back in the NXT women's division when they already have enough star power there as it is. So, no, I do not want to see that happen. But if Rhea wins, that's a huge win for her. And I hope that happens, and it's a fresh match. And they have history from the SmackDown before the Survivor Series pay-per-view when Ripley pinned Charlotte in that triple threat match with Sasha Banks. So it could absolutely happen. It could definitely, absolutely happen. And I'm not gonna get too optimistic that Ripley will be Flair, but otherwise it makes no sense. So I think it's a good idea. It does give NXT more exposure, and I like the idea of the match on paper, assuming it's built up the right way. Final question also from RJ. Do you think they should have waited for a takeover to do Dakota Kai versus Tegan Nox? Well, I mean, obviously. I'm recording this on Wednesday morning. I assume NXT's not stupid. NXT doesn't just blow shit off for no reason. I think they're going to do some sort of either non-angle, like an angle tonight, a non-match or whatever, like a brawl, and then they'll set up a rematch for the pay-per-view, for the takeover. For them to do just the match straight up tonight, which seems so bizarre when takeover's right around the corner, unless the card is so full that you can't add this match, I don't know why you wouldn't. Because they're clearly setting up Cole and Ciampa. Ripley and Belair is already confirmed. It's probably going to be Undisputed Era versus Matt Riddle and Pete Dunne. And then Keith Lee versus whoever. You need a fifth match. So Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox makes the most sense. I'm not really sure what other match you do aside from that. So I think tonight's match, they're advertising it very heavily. So it's going to sound like, it's better than them just throwing the match out there like, hey, we're doing this match tonight. It's better they're advertising it, and then for them to advertise it and not deliver because they're going to do it at a later date, I think it's totally fine. So I'm hoping that's what they do. If they do the match, it might be some sort of shit finish to set up a rematch. Either way, this is not the end of the line for this feud. I absolutely see this going to TakeOver as it should. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's edition of #AskGSM, episode 322 for January 29, 2020. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show. Very much appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. A lot of content going up in the next couple days between Wrestle Rant Radio excerpts tomorrow, talking about the Rumble and everything else. On Friday, we have my review of Ms. and Mrs., which comes back tonight on the USA Network. Saturday, my SmackDown review. Sunday, my review of the new season premiere Ride Along on Super Bowl Sunday. That's coming up on Sunday after airing on Friday. And then Monday, my review of what's going up on Sunday. I feel like there's a new, Break It Down, that new show with Kevin Owens, which should be great. So that's going up on Monday. A lot of content going up right now. No better time to subscribe here to the channel. Quickly approaching 4,000 subscribers. So subscribe today. Very much appreciate it. That being said, one final time, if you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And drop your question down below in the comment section in this very video section, on this very video, rather. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So with all that being said, guys, have a great rest of your day, week, whatever. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Enjoy WrestleMania season, and I'll catch your ass down the road.